have a confession. I'm nervous because it's not every day that you get to sit with the Nobel and the Bookers, So thank you for this opportunity for coming to the festival. I want this to be a very, very light and freewheeling conversation where I want three of you to ask questions to each other, which normally you don't. So, and Nobel can ask questions to the Bookers, and the Bookers can ask questions to the Nobel. So, yes. I start with Gurnah. Kerala is very, I think, is important to your body of work. Kerala and the Indian Ocean region, the Malabar coast. What are your impressions of when you come for the first time to this region? What are your first thoughts of coming to this region?
Yeah. Hello. Thank you. Hello. Well, I was talking a little bit about this in the earlier event, that Kerala was a place that we had heard of, we knew about that west coast of India, because a lot of people from that part regularly, for centuries, have been coming our way. India is always both a surprise and somewhere familiar, particularly on the coast. You see the architecture and you think, hey, we see houses like that in Zanzibar, because they were probably built by Indians, or food, or familiar with the sound anyway of several Indian languages. I didn't really understand them, but there were several Indian communities, including South, West India, including Gujarat, and further north, Bohras, etc. So there were many aspects of India that were already familiar. And sometimes you recognize them. That kind of veranda, yes, we have that kind of veranda too, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but then you migrated to the UK at the age of 18. So, I mean, let me take you back to those your memories, early memories. As you said, the India, how much is left there? What do you remember?
Oh, yeah, everything. Well, a lot of things. It's one of the little curses of being a writer, really, remembering. Because very often, it's almost like memories are on some kind of a string, that when you begin to think of one thing, it also reminds you of the thing preceding or connected to it. And so maybe string is not a good word, maybe like a web. And so things keep kind of enlarging in a way rather than being lost. And for a certain kind of writing, it's an invaluable hinterland, maybe should I call it that, for the writer, because that's where you go to to endorse experience, to understand something, even if you're not actually writing about that moment, but to understand how a family might function with, let's say, a brutish father or something like that. You don't necessarily need to have grown up with a brutish one. You could simply have observed one from some distance.
Okay. And Shehan, in an October 12 years ago, both of us sat under a banyan tree here when Mr. Gurnah said about memory and the web of memory. Can you just tell us, do you remember those days when you came up with Chinaman? We both were here and I interviewed you. Can you tell us when after 12 years, you're coming back as a different writer and having won the Booker? Can you take us back to those days and now?
No, I remember it well. It was that tree over there, right?
Yeah.
So it was one of my first lit fests, Kovalam it was called then. And sat under there, and I think, it was one of my first interviews as well, and
yes.
I wasn't very used to all of this stuff, and I'd written a silly cricket book, and it was flattering to be invited to exotic places. Though, I mean, Kerala, as a Sri Lankan, you come here, it's sort of like a bit of a homecoming, because the landscape's very similar. This place here, this could be I want to build a place like this in Kurunagal. It'd be a lovely writing studio. But also, I mean, the food is identical, almost up in the upper pit too. We have that. The language also, I see lots of similarities, and yeah, the people. It's like family there. So I don't know if it's been documented. It probably has been by people better educated and cleverer than me. The connection between Kerala and Sri Lanka, because according to orthodoxy, Sri Lankans came from Odisha or Bengal. But certainly, when you look at the menu and the language, I think certainly there's been a lot of trade and culture exchanged. But yeah, I do remember 12 years ago I was first book, and since then, yeah, a lot has happened. Yeah, I got married, I had 2 kids, moved country twice, tried to write a book several times. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's wars ended, and then new wars began, and the country imploded. So it's been a eventful 12 years. But yeah, that tree is still standing, and so are we. So that's a great thing.
Jokha, this is your first visit to Kerala, right? Yeah, many times to Kerala. So, what are your impressions of visiting here at the festival? Let's start on a personal note.
Yeah, I like the vibe, of course, and I like how green it is. I love trees, so I like how green it is. And the agriculture and also the architecture is similar to some places in Oman for the same reason maybe that Gurnah mentioned. So yeah, I like it. I came several times, not just only for literary missions.
Okay, now let's move to the prizes. 3 of you have won prestigious prizes. How has the Nobel changed, or has it your life, your writing, everything?
Well, in the first place, of course, it is a wonderful thing to have been awarded such a prize. It's a recognition of the writing. You're being invited to join a very strong team. Many of those people who have preceded me, I think I was number 121. Many of those are people whose work I have over the years read with admiration. So that's a wonderful feeling to be, told, okay, now you can join this team as well. So that's the personal thing. But from the other point of view, and very importantly, it led to the reissuing of all the books, some of which were out of print, but several were in print, but some are out of print. But so everything is now available. That's also a wonderful thing for a writer to know and to feel that your work has not disappeared somewhere, that it's actually available, it's out again. And then the translations. Everybody, very many people, as you know, the Nobel is a global event. And many people all over the world who are readers want to read the books and want to read them, even if they can read in English, they also want to read them in their own languages, which then leads to new editions, and it's just great. Now, how has it changed me? Well, I don't know, but it makes me happy.
Shehan, how has it changed your life?
How has it changed? I mean, firstly, a word about prizes. I think, we all follow these awards. The Oscar nominations came out, so, you want to watch the films and so on. But, I came to the conclusion over the years that, most prizes are nonsense until you win one. And then, until you win one, then all the other ones are nonsense. And there's lots of data to back this up. I think the Beatles won 1 Grammy. Post Malone has won 7. Hitchcock never won an Oscar. So there are many examples of great books that never won prizes. And let's face it, there's been a few cases where something has won and you kind of scratch your head thinking, really, that won, then maybe I should win the next one. And so, but I think what prizes do is I mean, for me, certainly, I followed the Booker, the Nobel, the Pulitzer, and I think it gives you a curated bunch of books, and it may not necessarily be the one that wins, but say, in the long list. Yeah, and especially, I mean, I followed this year's long list for obvious reasons, and I remembered what an eclectic bunch, what a weird bunch of books, and I'm making my way through it. And I think that's the gift that these prizes give to readers, is that at least you may not agree with the choices, and it's obviously flawed. It's 5 or 10 judges in a room, and it depends on their taste. But so I think it's useful in those terms, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I wrote the best book of last year. I think that's certainly not the case. So with all that caveat in place, you acknowledge that it's a lottery, and because I've also submitted to many prizes that I've never won. I've written 30 stories. Each one of them was submitted to, you name it. And and I thought some of them were not too bad, but I never even got a long list. But again, I treat it like the lottery. Maybe one day it'll come in. So with all that complex relation, so all this time I had sour grapes. Oh, prizes are nonsense. We don't write for prizes. And then you win one, so then you have to pretend that this one is worth something. And of course it is. So it means that, so when I wrote Chinaman, it was a little cricket book that, I mean, it traveled, and it also won the Commonwealth and the DSC, and that gave it some traction. But it didn't make the next book any easier to write. In fact, it might have even made it harder because I was distracted with the circus and so on. And this book, it was finished a year ago. It was finished at the end of 2021. And I remember I was grateful that it was done. I thought it was okay. But there wasn't a lot of interest in reviewing it. And my publisher, I mean, they keep the bad news from you, but I was going, where are the interviews, where are the reviews? They go, no, we're coming. They say that we're on the list. And then you get the long list, and suddenly everyone's your friend, and your agent who never replied to your email suddenly calls you every morning. Did you have breakfast? Are you okay? Can I do something for you? So the difference is, agents, publishers, reviewers who I'd been hounding for many years suddenly are now hounding me that I need to hire people to answer my emails. That's what it's come to. So it may sound like I'm grumbling. I'm certainly not, because we write in anonymity, hoping that someone may read our book, review it, like it. And then when suddenly you get something like this, the whole world is reading your book, and it is quite overwhelming and all that. But I'm immensely grateful for it. But I am also waiting for the circus to end so I can go back to writing another book. But not anytime soon, I believe.
There is a personal moment of glory for me, because before he went to London for the Booker Award, he sent me a mail, said, I'm leaving for London, see you on the other side. So it's become my personal thing. Then we were rooting that Shehan should win. So that's it. Jokha, you tell me now, what is the moment when you won the international Booker? What were your thoughts? How has it impacted you?
Yeah. Well, there are thousands of books published every year, and as a passionate reader, there is no way that you can always find the great books. So I think that's why they invented prizes in the first place, to help us reader to know and what to choose. Of course, as Shehan said, there are a lot of great books that they never win anything. But at the same time, this long-listed and short-listed and winners help us to navigate our journey through reading. And for me, I was surprised. And also, it was a very great moment, because it's the first time that a book written originally in Arabic and won the prize. So it was good for Arabic literature as well. People get more curious about it, and many publishers actually get curious. And now there are few Omani novels translated into English after my winning, and hopefully they will get their ways.
Gurnah, you said, at a time when Europe, we see a wave of right-wing, anti-migration move. you're winning a prize where your body of work is mostly on exile, migration, displacement. How do you look at it? Is there a, how is going to help, or is it going to help this anti-migrant move? Sorry.
Well, the strange thing about this panic about migration and refugees is that it's an issue which divides societies. So I don't know how it might seem from a distance, but it's the government that's the worst, shall we say, perpetrator. The governments, because they're driven to some extent by a portion of their societies, or if you're talking about the UK, by the portion of the societies which is constantly being incited by the press to keep this issue alive, as it were, rather than to think more generously. And of course, democracy is democracy. People want to win the votes. And if you've got a block of the population, a section of the population, which might not even be the majority, who feel that this is a strong issue, and it is, or people are uncertain, that it's so very easy to incite people and to bring this issue alive whenever things arise, as it were. So I would say that there is a receptive audience, not just for the way I deal with these issues, but there is a receptive audience that wants to act with greater humanity when it comes to these questions of refugee and asylum seekers and displaced people, because they're not all the same thing. Now the word refugee has become so overused and so general that it refers to a whole variety of different kinds of displaced or dislocated people. Not all of them because they're in danger of their lives. It could be because people want to improve their lives. What's wrong with that? But because there is this narrative, which is a criminalizing narrative, a narrative that makes these people into people want to come and take things from us, to destroy our peaceful nations, or our prosperity, or this or that, then everything becomes the same. They all become the same. I don't think, I hope my books, those that deal with these issues, do make a contribution, but to the ongoing argument, to the ongoing conversation. But what I'm suggesting is that there is a very wide-ranging ongoing conversation to which this is just a part. And I just want to say, there are a lot of people doing small or unheard of acts of humanity and hospitality, not just writing, but looking after people, talking to people, visiting people, caring about people. But if my books contribute a little bit, I'm happy.
So do you think, Gurnah, that literature could have mission? Do you think that literature could have such mission?
Well, I don't think it's the mission as such of literature. No, I think what writers do is they see what they see. They're moved by whatever it is that it seems to them necessary to speak about, and they do so. I'm suspicious, I think, of writing that sits on a platform and says, this is my mission, or this is my case, this is what I'm doing. I'm not saying I can't do it. I don't want to stop anybody doing anything peaceful. But if that's what they're doing, that's fine. But I think I am more attracted to writing that says, this is the issue, what do you think? Rather than one that tells me this is what you need to do about such and such.
Shehan, what's your take on that?
The mission of literature. I'd like to think, say with the first book, when I wrote it, I thought it would inspire Sri Lanka to win another World Cup. I've been waiting a long time, and yeah, you guys stopped us in 2011. And could writing a book about the corruption in the cricket board, stop the corruption in the cricket board, no such luck there either. But I mean, on a more serious note, the second book, it's supposed to be an anti-war book. But we've had anti-war books, Joseph Heller. I'm watching All Quiet on the Western Front, which was written 100 years ago, and you'd think that novel would have ended all wars, and that was supposed to be the war to end all wars, but we can write anti-war books, but it doesn't seem like it has a great impact in stopping war or creating great cricket matches. So I'm a bit more cynical with it, but I'm not completely out of hope. I do think it can start conversations. So even though Seven Moons is unlikely to influence Sri Lankan politics in 2023, I noticed, and especially in Kerala, a lot of young, passionate readers coming up to me and talking about it, who were perhaps born after 1989 and weren't aware. I mean, Sri Lankans, young Sri Lankans, I don't know, we're taught about the ancient kings, we're talking about the colonizers. I'd be very surprised if we were taught about the last 40 years and what happened. And a lot of kids don't know about 83, about 89. And so perhaps that is something that literature can do. It can, when they read this, hopefully they're going back and reading about 83 and 89, which was, the truth is far more gruesome than anything I could make up. So maybe that could be, it's not nothing, it is something. But the big mission of whether it can solve migration crises, whether it can end wars, I don't know, the evidence doesn't seem to back that one up.
And in any case, you could talk about a historical moment, 1989, or whatever it might be, whatever the issue there are unlimited catastrophes to choose from. But it's the way that you write it, so that if you write it in too polemical or too partisan a way, it seems to me you're already heading towards a defeat, because that's precisely what we have at the moment, one narrative. And what you want to do, I think, when you revisit a moment like that, is to open it up so that you're inviting your readers to think again about that time or that episode or whatever it might be. So it's the way it's done, I think. It's not just simply forgetting things, but rather remembering in a way that opens things up rather than closes them down.
Jokha, let's talk about relationship. You are picked by relationships, And as we just said, I want to put that question back to you, the mission of literature. How do you look at relationship? Generational relationship, modern relationship. Can you talk about the relationship in your novel? The novel, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always interested in the complicated relationships. So when I write my novel, I don't know where is this going to lead me. And if I knew, I would stop writing because that will be very boring. I know everything in advance. So I write to know, I write to understand, I write to think, and thinking of complicated relationships is one thing that writing and, of course, reading gave me. And for example, in Celestial Bodies, there are many complicated relationships between generation, between a father and his son, between a mother and her daughter, between the lovers. So yeah, I think that one of the great themes that literature explored, and I also remember the character, the merchant character in the Paradise. He's very complicated person, and also his relationship doesn't seem like easy relationships. So yeah.
So can I ask you to read something in Arabic so that we can hear the cadence and the music of Arabic language?
Okay. And then you read the same in
English. If you want me to read,
from the first chapter.
Yes.
This is the very beginning of the novel, Sayyidat al-Qamar, which means the ladies of the moon. and it's translated as celestial bodies. ميا التي استغرقت في ماكينة خياطتها السوداء ماركة الفراشة استغرقت في العشق، عشق صامت لكنه يهز بدنها النحيف كل ليلة في موجات من البكاء والتنهد. شعرت مرارا بأنها ستموت تحت وطأة الرغبة في رؤيته. حلفت في سجودها في صلاة الفجر: والله العظيم يا رب لا أريد شيئا، فقط أن أراه. والله العظيم يا رب لا أريد أن يلتفت لي، فقط أن أراه. ظنت أمها أن مي الصامتة الشاحبة لا تفكر في شيء في هذا العالم خارج حدود خيوطها وأقمشتها، وأنها لا تسمع غير ضجيج ماكينة الخياطة، لكن مي كانت تسمع كل الأصوات في العالم وترى كل الألوان، وهي لا تتزحزح طوال النهار وشطرا من الليل من كرسيها الخشبي قبالة الماكينة، ولا تكاد ترفع رأسها عنها إلا لتناول المقص أو إخراج مزيد من الخيوط من سلتها البلاستيكية المحفوظة في جوف السحارة. أحست الأم بامتنان مذنب لقلة طعامها، وتمنت في سرها أن يأتي من يقدر موهبتها في الخياطة وبعدها عن النهم ويزفها لبيته، وجاء.
Jokha wants me to read in English. Maya, forever immersed in her singer's sewing machine, seemed lost to the outside world. Then Maya lost herself to love, a silent passion, but it sent tremors surging through her slight form, night after night, crusting in waves of tears and sighs. These were moments when she truly believed she would not survive the awful force of her longing to see him. Her body prostrate, ready for the dawn prayers, she made a whispered oath: by the greatness of God, I want nothing, O Lord, just to see him. I solemnly promise you, Lord, I don't even want him to look my way. I just want to see him. That's all I want. I'm going to stop here because it's long. So
Thank you.
this is. Let's move forward, and I want to ask Shehan to talk about Sri Lanka right now, and talk about your hopes of Sri Lanka.
These are the questions I usually avoid. I wrote about 1989 because I thought it was safe, because everyone's dead and all the antagonists, protagonists, the villains, the heroes are all dead in one way. So, but I get asked this question. I mean, when I was writing it in 2015, 2013, 14, 15, it was a time of, there was a strange hope. The war had ended and we were going to rebuild this country. And I often wondered, when the book comes out, will people actually believe that these terrible things happened? But of course, it came out in 2022, and people can very much believe that terrible things happened in Sri Lanka, because we had a completely separate, perhaps unrelated crisis. And so, yeah, this question comes at me to comment on current affairs, which is not really my forte. I by the time I write about, and there's certainly a lot of novels to be written about petrol queues and jumping in presidents' pools and so on. But perhaps by the time I get to it, it'll be 2040 and 2050.
Yeah.
But
Instead of, why don't you read something from China, but not from Seven Moons?
I wasn't going to completely, I was going to answer your question, but I was just giving you the preamble. Yeah. But what I will say is this: I think, look, it's we've been through a hell of a year, and I don't think the worst is over. We're hoping there'll be some new ideas at the next election, but I mean, like Abdulrazak said, like migration, when elections come along, all the best behavior comes out, and all this, the unity that we saw last year. I know when elections come along, suddenly majoritarian politics, that minority is trying to, people are still talking that there's a separatist movement brewing if we don't vote the right people in. And, but I'm hoping that at least the young who are behind this struggle will take the helm, and they don't seem shackled by these ideas that my parents' generation and even my generation inherited. Having said that, I'll read a bit from Seven Moons. In the course of my research, I came across the idea of death squads, and I was quite fascinated. They say it takes a village to raise a child. It seems to take a village to dispose of a body, because to dispose of a body, you need someone to drive the delivery truck, someone to chop up the body, someone to dig the hole, and then a couple of corrupt cops to cover things up, and maybe a minister to sign things off. So I was looking at the anatomy of a death squad, and this is a little passage where the cops are arguing with the body disposers, who are called garbage men, kunukarayas. And I'll just read a short passage here. The neighborhood was called Kompanya Vidya by the Sinhalese, Komanu Theru by the Tamils, both meaning Company Street. The British called it Slave Island. These names persist today and provide unsubtle clues to how natives and colonizers viewed one another. The back of Hotel Leo is an abandoned lot that serves as a rubbish dump for the neighborhood. The surrounding streets are crumbling buildings and slums. The crenellated rooftops are occupied by worried cats and bored bats. Body was here? Detective Kasim points to the dent in the garbage bags with the splatters in red. Kottu and Balal nod. You thought it was a drop-off? Sir, this building is the drop-off point, says Kottu. You didn't think there was too much blood? Didn't think like that, sir. Kasim shines a torch up the walls of the hotel. It looked like red and brown paint had been thrown down its side. You didn't notice those seams? Sir, when collecting garbage, no time to look at scenery. Keep talking like that and see what happens, snaps Constable Ranchagoda. From today, you will give full paperwork. Balal and Kottu are silent. Kasim shines his torch around the rest of the dump. The night has been one of bad smells. A breeze whizzes past him and makes him shiver. Detective Kasim turns to Kottu. He was thrown from one of those balconies. Not by us, right? Balal nods. Kottu coughs and looks away. So, where's the rest of the body? Kottu looks at Balal, who looks at its feet. It's gone, sir. So, I'm supposed to give his mother some limbs, a shoulder, and I don't know what that is. How do we prove it's Mali Almeida? Ranchagoda speaks up. If he was taken in before, his prints will be on file. Kasim shakes his head. I trust our fingerprint department less than I trust you. Where's the head? Sir, we threw it in the lake. Look, I don't want to hear it. Get me the head. I don't care if you have to drain the whole stinking beera. I need it tonight. Kottu picks up the phone in the office and gets driver Malli out of bed. Kasim lumbers towards the lift. What are we doing, detective? Asks Constable Ranchagoda once they are out of earshot. Better put in for overtime, Puta. Ranchagoda pauses outside the lift but does not go in. Kasim gets inside and holds it with his finger. What's the issue? Lokka, first you say you are transferring away from corpses, now you want to put in overtime? We have our job to do. What's our job? We protect the innocent, said Detective Kasim. I thought we protect the powerful. Do we need to discuss this now? Kasim takes his finger off the button, which causes the doors to close. He curses and sticks his arm out to block the lift's jaws. I'm confused about another thing. Get in the lift now. Sir, are we investigating this or are we covering this up? Thank you.
Thank you. Shehan Karunatilaka, it was the last time you came here, it was the Chats with the Dead. Then it went through a phase of rewriting. How different is it now from Chats with the Dead and it becomes 7 Moons of... perhaps you can,
Well, that's a big question. I'll give you a short answer. It's the same book, same DNA, same premise, roughly the same characters. Starts in the same place, I think ends roughly in the same place. But it also benefited from 2 years of tinkering with a very talented editor and myself. And and people are making side-by-side comparisons. I can't bear to go back and look at either of them. I'd say it's the same book, different title, different cover, but maybe Seven Moons is a lot more pacey, a lot more polished, and maybe it's a lot more focused and doesn't have too many instruments playing at once, which is my editor's phrase. But yeah, same book, but perhaps better.
Yeah, before we open the Q&A, I want to ask if you want to ask something to Shehan or Jokha, if the Nobel has something to ask something to the bookers.
Well, I've had a chance to speak with them already, so I think I've asked most of the questions I want to ask. So if you're ready to go to hear fresh new questions, that might be more fun.
Okay. Yeah, we have 20 minutes and we are ready to take questions.
Well, let me ask one from the Nobel.
Yeah, sure.
No, let's get the question. One obvious one, how many books do you need to write to be eligible for Nobel? I guess more than 2, right? So
I don't know. I don't think it works quite like that.
Well, Bob Dylan only wrote 1 book, so... yeah.
Although, on the other hand, when you look at the previous winners, because one of the things they do as part of the celebration is they send you this poster with a photograph of all the previous Nobels. And the majority of them look like they're in their 60s. So I don't know whether it's the number of books or the number of years.
But just another question for both of you, I think, since winning the prize, have you managed to, I know you have published 2 books, but have you managed to write anything new? And please tell me how.
Well, I can answer that, so to leave space. No, I've written lots of emails, though.